Hello and welcome to this episode of the Game Plan Podcast, episode 99, sponsored by College Baseball Advisors. For those of you that are new to the Game Plan, we cover anything or everything related to someone's journey through the game of baseball. Mostly we talk to college coaches, but we have other various people on and we learn from their experiences through baseball. My name is Wayne Mazzoni. I coached baseball in college for 30 years. And now run College Baseball Advisors, where I help kids and parents navigate the craziness of the recruiting process. If you want more information about what I do, visit my website, collegebaseballadvisor.com. And on today's episode, we had Kristaps Aldins, who is the head baseball coach at Stevens Institute of Technology, known affectionately as Coach Taps, because that's easier to pronounce. What a great human being this guy is. Known him for quite a long time. He was really excited to come on, which got me excited as well. And we talked about his background of his parents actually being born in Germany, moving to Latvia to escape the war, World War II, and then moved to the United States. So Kristaps was born and raised in Boston, played basketball and baseball, wound up going to Vassar College and playing baseball there, and then starting his coaching journey many years at MIT, which he tells a great story of how what he was getting paid there. First of all, how he framed his first check from MIT. And then secondly, that he worked, crazy schedule at UPS in order to coach. And again, the grind of coaching in the beginning is really difficult. From there, he went on and coached at Harvard with Joe Walsh, and he talks and says great things about the late Joe Walsh. And then he got the job at Stevens, where he's been for going on 16 years now. So we learn more about Stevens, the school, the baseball program, his recruiting style, his coaching style, et cetera. So I think you'll find this a really fun, interesting episode. Back to the live one, since the last several were COVID, because college coaches were in crunch time of their season. So we have some great episodes coming up. But without further delay, here is my conversation with Kristaps Aldins, head baseball coach at Stevens Institute of Technology. All right, Kristaps, we had a little fun here before we hit the record button, which is, I do that. I almost want to record the recordings with coaches before I actually hit the record button. There's a lot of fun and interesting stuff that happens there.
The break the ice moments. Right?
Exactly. So I'm very psyched to have you on here. You and I have known each other for quite a while. I know that my guess is, and we'll get to this in a little bit, you'd probably rather be prepping for the regionals than being on with an idiot like me, but that's the way it goes, right? There's a lot of teams, and it's tough regional to make, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this time of the year, Wayne, it's just really pick up the pieces time right now. You're trying to make sense of what happened. You're trying to make sure that all your student athletes are in a good place heading into the summer. They're taking their exams right now. You're thinking back about every decision that you made, the ones that worked. You mostly think about the ones that didn't work out, right? Because that's what we do, as you know. And it's a great honor to be here. I was very, very excited when you asked me to be on the podcast, because I know the reach that you have. You're right. We've known each other for a while, and just really excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, and just as before I hit recording, where something you said reminded me, you just reminded me of something now, which is I remember calling pitches, and most of them were the right pitches and they worked, right? But I would be going to bed at 11 o'clock going, why did you call a curveball there, you absolute idiot? So it's, I get that feeling of the season's over and you think about what went right and what went wrong. And we'll get to that. But I do want to start, I always like to start of kind of the beginning where, and I know you're Latvian and you have dual citizenship, but were you born in Latvia?
Yeah, so it's to say that I'm coming from a baseball background would be completely untrue. Latvia is, they are not known at all for their baseball playing ability. Their sports are soccer and ice hockey and recently basketball. Right, with Porzingis, who a lot of people started to know my name, once it came about, and,
exactly.
But no, I was born here. My parents were born in Germany. They were fleeing from World War II.
Wow.
So my grandparents emigrated, escaped the war, and then even my parents grew up in the States. So they speak fluent English, but I did grow up in a bilingual household, Latvian was my first language. So it definitely is a really important part of my identity, is having a foot in, both countries to some degree, at least, even though I identify as a United States citizen primarily.
Where were you born and raised?
So I grew up outside of Boston,
Okay.
actually. So in a town called Medway, which you may be familiar with,
Yeah.
Tri-Valley League. And then my parents moved to Brookline. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a carpenter for their profession. Musicians at heart, actually, interestingly enough. That's sort of what they identified as where their passion was. But really, Medway is where most of my childhood memories are from, where my love of baseball began. And, and my parents are in Westwood now. So mostly, about an hour to 30 minutes outside of Boston.
Did any of that musical interest make its way to you?
Oh, my mom tried, and I'm sure she's going to watch this at some point. I think, what I took from my parents, and unfortunately, my dad passed over the winter time.
Wow.
So it's been a tough year.
Yep.
But what I'm so grateful for to both of my parents is just like instilling like like wanting to have a passion for something, and I think, that's something that I try to gently, give to our student athletes too. I think there's a lot of pressures on our college students, but I'm really thankful that my parents instilled, that in me. And, I think that they also never doubted me. When I was at the beginning of my coaching career, they helped me pay off a lot of loans, Wayne, like some maybe that they're still paying off for all I know,
Right.
but it's like, I'm just so grateful to them for never doubting me in terms of what I wanted to do. And I think they knew me pretty well too. And I think that's a really big part too, of
Well,
just knowing your kids.
what's interesting though is you again said something that, like, let's face it, in while the world is not easy in 2026, we're facing different things than your parents faced fleeing
Yes.
Germany. Like obviously sorry to hear your dad passed, but they probably saw and had fear in just ways that were so different. And maybe to come to the United States with a new lease on things and be like, that's all you want for your kids. You want them to just find passion and something that they're excited about. So yeah, what instruments did they play?
So my dad he played it's called the block flute, which is like a recorder.
Yep.
He specialized in Baroque music era. So he, even up until the very end of his life, he was directing a choir
Wow.
in church. He was really passionate about. I don't think he ever would have retired. He's one of those guys that would have done it and did do it until the day practically that he left the earth. And then my mom was a singer. And together they ended up creating a Latvian American ensemble
Wow.
that performed in the then USSR right before Latvia broke free from USSR. Which was a really like to them it was the way my mom explains it's like that was her and my dad's World Series.
Right.
Like that was their pinnacle, moment. And I was fortunate enough to be part of it. I was holding the Latvian flag on the stage as a young child. Some incredible photographs of me in Latvian garb, if you will, which I guess is sort of like a baseball uniform, in some ways,
Yeah.
So, but my parents involved me a lot in the Latvian culture. And that was something that I'm really thankful for too, looking back.
So back to the sports thing, obviously baseball was a piece of growing up, especially in that area, heavy baseball area. When was it that you realized you were passionate enough slash good enough to go on and play in college?
Oh man, I think my route to college baseball, Wayne, was like so unusual. My like, in fact, it wasn't even baseball for a period of time. I was playing basketball, and I had dreams of going to the NBA, right? And as a 5'10" guy with no vertical leap, I think I was living in La La Land, in some kind of unrealistic realm, but I'm really thankful, and I'm sure we'll talk about this eventually. Like Rick Forestier at BB&N, Craig McLaughlin, who now is the head coach at BB&N, and Jesse Sarzana, and guys like that just were so pivotal to me coming into that BB&N program, which at the time was just a powerhouse. I barely played, to be honest. I was a reserve player, probably got 40, 50 at bats my senior and junior year. I didn't even think that I was able to be capable of playing in college, right? There was that much talent on that
Wow.
team. It was going Division I. I had 9. I tell people this story, like there were 10 seniors in my class. 9 of them went on to play college baseball.
Wow.
And that's in the senior class, right?
Wow.
That's not like the entire team.
Right.
And the one guy that didn't play Division I ice hockey.
Wow.
So just like no perspective at all. I didn't play on any travel teams. I played American Legion for Craig McLaughlin. That was really pivotal too in my confidence as a baseball player. I was basically running in the Huntington YMCA for basketball when I wasn't playing baseball, and that was my AAU team for basketball, right? So, I would never advise the path that I took, but I do think there was a lot of things that I gained through that path that ended up helping me both throughout college baseball and then also my coaching career.
It's interesting. There's a lot of people I've had on here, a lot recently, that both as players and almost as coaches went the basketball route. Like they loved basketball, was almost their favorite sport. And obviously they loved baseball too. But it's interesting how just the same way as you. And obviously one of the difficult parts when I'm advising kids on baseball is like, hey, you're pretty good in your area, but if you look at the big picture, you may not be as good as you think you are. It seems like basketball is that times 10. Like, yeah, you're 5'10", you're good on your high school team, but in this country, there's probably a lot of dudes that are way better in basketball pockets around the country. What was the other thing I wanted that you mentioned in there too? That was oh yeah, there's a team here in Connecticut, 𝐬𝐿, that is absolutely stacked with players, churning out high-level players. And I am just reminding me of what you said, like you got 40, 50 at-bats at BB&N, and there's kids at 𝐬𝐿 who will get 40, 50 at-bats that will play college baseball. That's how stacked they are. But what do you remember about getting then to college and to Vassar? Like, what was that journey like of actually making that decision?
Yeah, pretty easy decision. It was the only school that recruited me, right? There were some other NESCAC schools. My mom encouraged me, to look into some of those. She was a guidance counselor in addition to being a teacher. So that's another thing I'm thankful to her for, is just, gently paving the way for me, and trying to get me to a better place than what maybe she had growing up. But still let me make my own choices, right? And supported me. They didn't take over the process, but they just sort of gently nudged me in a good direction. And I look at all these recruits, how organized they are, and, how they speak to adults. I was so not that at that time in my life, but I had this passion for baseball and basketball at the time. And, it was really so meaningful to me, when I had those conversations with Chris 𝐾𝐭, who at the time was the head coach at Vassar, or the assistant, Andy Barlow was the head coach, but really all of my interactions through recruiting were with Coach 𝐾𝐿. And, these choices that young men have to make now, to me, there was no choice, right? I was, as long as we could make it work and I could get accepted, that's where I was going to go. And I just couldn't envision a life without baseball in college. So I went for it, and it ended up being an awesome experience playing for Andy.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I wrote down what you said, gently paving. I think that's a good, having your mom be a guidance counselor and doing it the right way. I deal with a lot of parents, well-meaning, but they're not gently paving. They're forcing it. And listen, I get it, because as adults, you have kids we want the best for them, but they're somehow doing it in a way where they get to discover their own path rather than having it forced down their throat. I think that's some good that probably came out of that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I would even go as far as saying to like when it came to the games, and this is gonna sound bad, right? On my mom and dad, like I don't think that they came to one game, the entire career. Part of that was because they were so busy with their own lives. It wasn't because they didn't support me,
Of
because
course.
when I would get home, they would ask me about how it went. My dad would follow the games, he knew exactly what was going on, but like that's another thing I'm thankful to them for. And I know that, that depends on the family dynamic and stuff, but like I'm just thankful that they stayed out of the way. Like I'm thankful that they didn't question Rick about playing time decisions. I'm thankful because I definitely saw some other kids that were in that position in high school. It's like it's almost like you feel embarrassed for them, like
Right.
because like I just wouldn't have wanted my mom. It would have felt very uncomfortable if my mom or dad was like intervening in what we're coaching. That's how I felt even at that time, you know.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I'm very thankful to my parents for, is just staying out of the way.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, that's right. They're supporting you, but right, they're busy. Your dad, right? He's running a construction business. Your mom's teaching guidance counseling, probably doing. It's like, yeah, that's difficult to be at everything. And there was probably no game changer. And then even if there was,
Heck,
yeah,
yeah.
right, exactly.
Wayne,
So,
my recruiting video was a VHS tape that
yeah,
Rick helped me put together. A couple swings off a tee. He threw me a couple balls in the outfield. I pitched off the mound on like a day where, I mean, I was like 135 pounds on the mound. And it was windy. I think I got blown off the mound a couple of times.
yeah,
VHS
it's
tape.
funny. Oh, it's fun. I mean, listen, I've been was coaching long enough that everybody used to get the 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐞 tapes that were these
Oh
VHS
yeah,
tapes.
legend,
Oh, legend.
legend.
Yeah, legend tape.
Jimmy and Joe, like legends. Like,
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Joe Wattiga that sent it. This many years later, what do you remember about being a student and player at Vassar, which is really one of the world's best institutions? So what do you remember from that experience?
um, like feeling like really lucky to be there, because I felt like in some ways I didn't belong.
Mm,
I didn't feel like I was a really great student. I wasn't. I think my GPA was like a 3.3 or a 3.4 at BBNN, which I know that would have played up, if I
right.
had been a different high school. But even in my own high school, there were so many students, right, that were not only smarter than me, which my mom's gonna hate. She's gonna hate hearing this, because like I just think that she hates when I speak this way. But it's like realistically, I think baseball was a big part of why I got into Vassar. They had just started a varsity baseball team recently. Andy had been the head coach there for only a couple of years. And, I look at the standards now, like there's no freaking way. Like there's no way that I get in there now.
Brutal
You
place
know?
to get into. Really hard.
So again, even then, even looking back then, like I knew that I could do well there. But like I was really thankful for my Latvian heritage. I was really thankful for my baseball, whatever baseball did to help me to get me there. And I did fine. I probably had the same GPA as I did there as I did in high school. In fact, the work probably felt easier at times.
Mm.
But I think the getting in part, like that's the part where I also count my blessings about how lucky I was to be there at that time in that moment under those circumstances to get that life-changing opportunity at Vassar.
Was it during your playing, student playing career, or was it after that you realized you'd go down the coaching path?
Um, I think I would say I always knew, even going back early in my childhood, it's all that I wanted to do. Every
Wow.
waking moment was about sports. I don't think I knew at the time that I wanted to be a coach.
Right.
That's all I wanted to do. I did a fifth, like super senior year. I found a way how to be able to take 2 credits in my fifth year in the spring semester, one of which had no written work. I think I cheated. I think that like a basket weaving,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people at Vassar that really frowned upon that I found a loophole, in the NCAA rules, where I could take a semester off in the fall and then be able to take 2 credits in the spring and play baseball. But it was like the end of my senior year where I started talking to my coaches, Coach Campazzi and Andy, Coach Barlow there, about coaching. And from that point forward, it was like dead set mission to make it happen. It wasn't an option to fail. I was doing this. My parents knew I was going to do it. And I had some really good mentors, like Andy in particular, like prepped me really, really well for what to expect as a volunteer coach and as a young assistant coach. So I'm super thankful to him.
Yeah, it is funny. It's nice to hear you say that because I remember going back to my early career, having no mentorship, no guidance.
Yep.
That beginning of a coaching career in college is rough, man, because
Oh,
you're making an impact, but you're not making much money. And meanwhile, you're seeing all your buddies who are knuckleheads that are knuckleheads. They're
right.
making the big money in these jobs and
Oh, yeah.
it could be a difficult time, but. So correct me if I'm wrong, and I could be. Was MIT the first place where you started coaching?
Yeah, it was. And they paid me a small stipend. I think it was like $2,000 for the whole year. But basically a volunteer coach. That's how I identified. And I actually I still have the MIT check up in my house. Like I framed it.
That's cool.
Because like obviously I cashed it. It's not like a Ricky Henderson story, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? But I just thought it was cool at the time that MIT actually paid me. Like it was like, yeah, like Massachusetts Institute of Technology gave me some of their money. Like I'm gonna put that up on my wall, But I was working nights. And that's another thing about this whole story. Like I was trying to figure out a way how to be able to make money, live at home, to be able to save money, which Andy also recommended to do. And then also be able to have the afternoons and evenings free for baseball. And so I distinctly remember driving around my neighborhood trying to find some place, that would accommodate that. And I saw the UPS, United Parcel Service, and I'm like, that's it. Like, that's where I can work nights, because I remember Chip Forrest, who also was and still is a great mentor to me, had worked at Logan Airport in the nighttime. I remember him telling stories about how he did that at Suffolk and working for Joe Walsh, who, we'll get to Joe, right? We'll get to Joe. There's a lot I got to say about Joe, right? But just incredible guidance, right? And so I go in there, I apply, and they put me in there as a loading boxes, right? And then I remember the human resources guy, Jim, I forget his last name, but he pulled me into his office and he asked me if I wanted to be a part-time supervisor. And I was like, heck yeah. Like, what does that entail? Because it was going to be a higher salary than what I was making loading boxes. And so he put me in there. I did that for the next 5.5 years.
Wow.
Working between 2 in.the.morning until it was a 5.5 hour shift. So they moved me around like 4:30 to 9. Then they put me 1 to 6:30. And it was perfect because I could take a nap in the morning. And then basically from like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock onward, I could do baseball all day. It was perfect.
Let's say it was also perfect because you probably were not married with children.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another thing. Like, I think as a coach, you have to put other parts of your life on hold.
Right.
I think, and that was another set of guidance. Like for me, I was on a mission to get to where I wanted to be, and once that happened, okay, then I would entertain other things, and that's sort of how I executed it. And, it's tough. Like when I see younger coaches, it's not one of those things that you can tell them, don't do that. Right. Like you live your life the way that it's meant to be lived. I do think that it's really hard though, to break into the industry, to give it your all, even if you have a pet, right? If you have a dog, right? Even that's hard, right?
It is.
To be able to do it, then you got to be certain places at certain times. And it doesn't always jive with coaching, let alone a relationship with somebody.
Yeah, it's funny. a lot of the things you're saying, I'm tying into, I'm reading a book about Benjamin Franklin now. And, before he became this famous, great at everything, he was really industrious in printing. And it's like he had these standards he was going to live his life by. And it sounds like a lot of things that you're, saying too, which is really cool. So after MIT, now you make the move. I want to say the year is 2010. You go to Harvard. Is that accurate? Was it 2010?
Yeah.
Do you recall? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it right. Along the way, there was a stop in the NECBL as another volunteer, a small stipend. Jason Falcon, who now
Oh, right.
is at RPI,
RPI. Yeah.
got to work with him for 2 summers. That was a blast. You know, was working UPS too at the time, so like that was insane. Like some of the trips up to Sanford and then driving back, going straight to work, UPS, and then sleep. Like it was wild.
Right.
I'm thankful that thankful for coffee and just, like those
Thank
were
you,
some long
coffee.
drives, yeah, for like getting back to Westwood and getting an hour or two of sleep. But that was pivotal too, because Andy and Chip both said that the coaches at MIT that I just needed to be around baseball more. Like D3 baseball is great, but like you got to get outside and be around a better caliber of player and more games day in and day out. And what better way to do that than to play 55 games, over late May to August.
Yeah.
So
No question. And by the way, I've tried to get Jason Falcon on the podcast many times.
I'll work on him.
Yeah, he
I'll work
turns me
on him.
down. He's turned me down.
Yeah,
Maybe you
I'll
work.
work on him. I'll get with him. He's got some stories to tell about me too. So
Um,
he'll get some good ones on me for sure.
before we talk to the Harvard thing, though, you mentioned, and I knew this happened, but I wasn't sure of the timeline. Obviously, you played for Andy Barlow at Vassar. When you went to MIT, was that when he went to MIT? Was that
Yeah,
this? It was. Okay, got
yeah.
it.
So he left Vassar, and Chris 𝐾𝐭 ended up being the head coach for one season. That's also when John Martin came into my
Yes,
life.
Martin.
He was the assistant. I know you know him real well.
Very well, yes.
Worked a lot of your events over the years. And so he was the assistant. And then the year I graduated, John ended up taking over the head coaching position at Vassar. So now I had John Martin, right, as a contact. I had Andy Barlow. I was basically living in Harvard's office, like just pouring over Coach Walsh's what's it called? Like the heavy paper, like the cardboard paper, because he used to do everything by hand. He wasn't using Front Rush and
Right,
whatever
totally.
other Teamworks and all these other arms. Like it was like cardboard paper questionnaires that would be sent out to kids around the country. And then I would leaf through these binders trying to find recruits for MIT that at Harvard wasn't recruiting. And, I was just around. I was going to their practices. I was working their camps, and then Tom Larico became a
Yep.
really big contact and friend for me at that time too. Tom was pivotal, right, in things that happened in my career from that point forward. He convinced me to leave UPS and go for it. He was like, you're never going to make it if you're working nights. Like you have to go all in. And he just like kept wearing me down about this. Like, you got to quit the job. You got to quit the job. You got to do baseball 365 if you want to do this. And I finally listened to him. And that's when some other things started to click in my career too. So I'm thankful that he gave me that advice, some of the best advice that he gave me.
This is fun. That's why I really do enjoy doing this. Is Tom Larico was my Stanford All-Star baseball camp roommate when we
Oh
worked
yeah.
camps way back when at that
Yeah.
place. Yeah, which was really
Oh
cool.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, talk about, Walsh is a guy I would say I knew a little bit, never obviously coached with him. And so, and of course he's passed since, but what do you remember about him as a person and a coach?
Just larger than life. Like, I just think, he cared so much about people, like I owe everything to him. He took a chance on me um, as a really young, and inexperienced coach, and just treated me like gold,
Mm,
like treated me like I was the most important person in the world. And I remember nights at, Pizzeria Regina, the Sports Depot, with him, just watching the Celtics and I remember he had a couch, and he would sleep in the office like 2 or 3 nights a week. He would pull out couch and like just lived and breathed baseball. I remember we had played Princeton, I think, and it was I think the second year, and it was a really tough season. And I remember, we lost the game. I went back in the office, probably did an hour or two of work, and it was like 9 o'clock. And I got on my bike because I was living in Brighton at the time to sort of skirt the parking rules.
Yeah, get that.
I
Yeah.
was riding my bike to my apartment. That's how I got to and from Harvard. And like, he's still in the dugout at 9 o'clock. The game ended at 5.
Oh my God.
Full uniform, right? Like, that's how much it mattered to him. Like, and I think stuff like that, like you were talking about living and breathing, the decisions and stuff, like, I think like the care factor was so high with him that that was a really good influence for me too, about how much he cared for the kids and how much he respected and loved the game.
Yeah, that's well said. Like if you're not in coaching to really make people better humans, it's you really should. Like, yes, baseball is the vehicle by which you do that, but it sounds like that's what he was, and I know that's the kind of guy you are, from our dealings together. But
Thank you.
yes, we
That's
get
an
to
honor.
yeah, you got it.
Thank you.
So 2012, now you have the opportunity at Stevens, if I have that correct, in
Yeah.
2012 is, yeah, which you've been there since. You got a nice long run going now. Listen to this though. You got Vassar, you got MIT, you got Harvard, you got Stevens. People would think you're a bright guy, with all these places you've been, like this
Right. Exactly. And in reality, the kids, I always say the kids are smart, not me. I'm just the baseball coach, who has the check from MIT framed in my
Right.
apartment at that, but that's not, like, you're right. Like, these places were, I didn't know really what I had, right? When I did not take it for granted, but it was almost like I'm one of the lucky ones. Like, I just always seem to find a way to be in the right place at the right time with those opportunities, and that's not something that's lost on me. I do believe in making your own luck. I think I worked hard. I
Sure.
think that's another thing that my parents instilled with me, is like the work ethic. And if you want something, you got to go out and get it. I do believe in making your own luck, but yeah, like, I definitely caught a ton of breaks along the way that a lot of young coaches just don't get. And I just don't want to take that I don't want to waste the opportunity,
Yeah, I think you're right. Listen, everyone who's gotten where they are, there's been some breaks, but by showing up every day and trying to do the best job you can, that's when those opportunities come. Just like you were doing all the stuff you went through doing UPS in the summer and all these different things, and you certainly earned the opportunity. This next question is for everybody, but for me, Stevens is sadly one of those places I have not been to. Um,
yeah,
so can you tell me and everyone, let's start about the, institution itself, and then we'll
sure.
talk baseball. So tell us about the university.
Yeah, so Stevens, like you said, I'm heading into year 16, which, again, like, you blink your eyes and, you've been here for that long. I still remember year one and the whole process that played out for me to get here. But we're just a fantastic university that offers an expertise in technology and a location that just really can't be beat. I mean, we're right next to New York City. Just minutes away, we overlook the skyline of Manhattan. Probably 40 minutes door to door. If you start walking from our campus, then get on the subway, the PATH station, and you're there. You're in front of Madison Square Garden. I am a Red Sox fan, so like, that's a bit of a downside. I know you work with Bobby Valentine, and just that's been interesting. Being from Massachusetts in New York City, to say the least. I put up a picture of Fenway Park in my office, and I remember on my first day, one of the secretaries stole it from the office and hid it. And that was their way of giving me my welcome.
Yeah, that's hysterical.
But just an incredible place. I get to see that view every day. When I see that view, I think about opportunity. I see our athletes, our student athletes, going out getting incredible jobs in the tech space. In the business world, tech and business work so well in hand. A lot of people think that we're an engineering school. We're not. We're a technology school, and business and technology are a perfect match. So I would even say business is about 65% of our roster. So the engineering is much smaller than what people think. Business is actually our number one biggest recruit. You just gotta, if you're gonna come here, you gotta either love tech or you have an interest in learning about technology. If you're not into technology, we're not the right place for you.
What's the enrollment?
So we're generally like, it started a little lower. Now we're over 4,000. So I would call us like a small to mid-range school. It's the type of place where when you walk around campus, you're going to run into people that right? You're going to run into professors. You're going to run into coaches. You're going to run into friends. When we have a recruit on campus, I think there's like a 90% success rate that during the tour, we run into one or two of our players. You just can't avoid it.
Right.
This is probably the coolest part, is that even though we are a small to mid-range campus and you can walk the campus in probably 5-7 minutes, you got New York City in your backyard.
Yeah.
So like you're never enclosed by the space. You can go out and like live in New York City or all 4 years if you wanted to.
All right, let's shift gears to the baseball program. I know it's tough to encapsulate all your time. I know there's been several Coach of the Year awards, a couple of regionals that you've been to, but however you want to answer it, how would you describe the program?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the top of the food chain, in terms of the Division III world. We're really proud of what we've been able to build here. I think we have our priorities in order. We want to find student athletes that care just as much about baseball as they do about getting the degree. And I think that the way I worded that, there's a reason for Edwin Thompson gave me that one. So shout out E, for giving me that quote. We know that our guys are gonna be smart, right? What we don't know is how much they love the game, right? So that in recruiting process, we're trying to figure out how much baseball matters to them, And I think for us, if we're going to get into that, like we finished 58th, I think, in the NPI, which was 6 spots out. So it was a painful weekend. Like you said, not only did we lose, but, we're sweating out scores and unfortunately it didn't fall our way. Just, excruciating, right, to see how close we were, right, which I know will drive our team for next year. But if we're going to get to that next level, like we just need to put the pedal to the metal on guys who care about baseball, and some of which may even have a dream of playing past college. And we've had 4 MLB affiliated contracts in the last 7 years. So it is possible to play past Stevens. We've had even more guys play indie ball and play internationally in places like Germany in the Bundesliga. So in the beginning, it was a dream, like a sort of a vision that we would have guys playing baseball past college. And now, I think for anybody coming in, it's a reality that you can do it.
I know from dealing with you on the recruiting side that I've been on for a while, that it's big for you to know the kid is really interested in the school. Like if you feel like he's not that interested and I got to really get him excited about the place, it's not going to, if the kid does his research and realizes how awesome the place is and is genuinely interested in, and he's a good player, you'll get interested on that on your side. Is that accurate read on the way you approach it?
Yeah, I think that's for us, we recruit the guys that are interested in us. If somebody's not going to be interested in to return a text message, to be able to return a call, or is disorganized in doing so, like I've been given the answer right there. Right. So that's another thing. Different people have taught me, great recruiters, like you don't want to chase guys. You know what I mean? Like they'll tell you whether they're interested in you. And so it's a very simple process. Like get the guys on campus, get to know their family, be able to see what makes them tick. And then, but we also want to be in a position where we're choosing who we want.
Right.
So it's sort of like we recruit the guys that are interested in us, but we still want to give ourselves the choice of who we end up picking for our program. So you just have to build your database and, you know, your circle of recruits that way, so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket of just one player. So if you can do that, you generally are going to get a pretty good class, I think.
You've already said, obviously, you want a kid. Obviously, you need a kid with good grades. You need a kid that's interested, and really likes the school. Is there particular things in the way you run the program that you might be looking for from a baseball standpoint, whether it's pitching or as a position player? You know, some people might value power more, some like a small game more, some guys like velo, some guys like a changeup. Is there anything that you value in recruits that maybe is different from the way other people evaluate players?
Great question. I got to take a minute to think about that. I mean, I think we as coaches sort of have a beat on like what our program needs or what we're missing. So, you know, definitely pitching and defense. Like, I think for us to be able to advance deep in the playoffs, I think you gotta be able to stack up in the arms race. Like, you gotta be able to have some pitchers that are gonna be able to shut down some pretty prolific offenses. Speed is also a big plus. Like, I like being able to have guys in center field and in the corners, in the outfield, middle infield that can run and be able to steal some bags. But, you know, there's also been some years where, you know, we're popping the ball out of the yard at a pretty good clip. And, you know, you just try to play towards your strengths. You know, we're not like, we don't play one particular way. I wouldn't call us a system program, you know, where we're only recruiting one type of player. Like, the fall is for evaluating what your strengths are, and then we try to play towards those strengths and sort of chip away at the weaknesses, or try to hide those weaknesses so that we can win as many games as possible.
I know that soon enough, the transfer portal may be changing with all that's going on. My plan to figure that out is let's see what happens, and then I'm going to get on the phone with Steve Trimper, who always seems to know everything from the inside and actually teaches me so I can be educated on it. Would it be fair to say that, at least in the current landscape, kids leaving, kids coming in, the portal is very, very, very small at Stevens?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some success in the grad transfer space. I think that's a big advantage for us. I almost would have listed, when you asked me like what to talk about our program, like what's like great about Stevens as a university. It's a really underrated thing, and like something that people just don't even think about when they're picking college is like, do you have the ability to play while you're a grad student? I didn't, right? I didn't at Vassar, you know, that didn't even exist at that point.
Right.
But here, right, if you happen to get injured, right, or if you happen to play Division I and then you have an extra year of eligibility, you know, we've been able to draw some Division I talent here for grad school, or some top D3 talent for grad school. And then we've also had guys who have graduated here and then gone to Division I for grad school.
Right.
So it's like a two-way street. And if you figure out how that works, can you call me and tell me? It's like, I would love to hear what the answer is, you know, about, because I don't think any of us really have it.
No.
But regarding the portal, I would agree. Like, we're not trying to build our program out of the portal. That's not a negative for programs that are.
Right.
It's just not, like, for us, we try to treat the portal almost as like a stopgap, right? If we're weak at one position heading into that year, then maybe we could find a guy from an Ivy school or a NESCAC or, you know, Centennial's conference, right, where we could maybe gain some experience and sort of just hold it over for 1 year, right, until some of our younger guys can gain that experience to be able to play the way that we need them to play in our conference, which is really tough. So, and then we pay attention to guys who reach out to us, you know, guys who email us, who write an email where it's sort of clear that Stevens is a top choice, not those generic emails.
Which we know what those look like. Yep.
Or like, you can tell when somebody actually is serious about Stevens the way they write the email. And we definitely pay attention to those guys. And we've had a pretty high success rate with our grad transfers. And it's also been awesome to see guys who graduated go out to play Division One. We've had guys go to Boston College, Northwestern, Georgetown, Southern Illinois. And those are not the guys that got when I was talking about the affiliated signings.
Right.
That's a whole different subset of guys.
Right.
So I think that has been really cool for our Division III level, is to see. We've always felt like guys turn themselves into Division I players, but like now you can quantify it. You can see
That's
that
great. Yeah.
they went from Stevens and they had success at Southern Illinois. They go to Georgetown and lead their bullpen in appearances, and like that's something that really like gets me up out of bed in the morning, is like the challenge of being able to transform these guys from Division III guys from the beginning, but by the time they're junior and senior, they've worked themselves into a Division I talent. And from a baseball standpoint, that's something that really, like makes me excited, like trying to see that development over time.
Yeah, and I think it's because of the portal movement. We knew it, coaches knew it, but everyone else, that the difference between a really good D3 kid and program and a Division I is not a huge difference, right? Like if you took quote unquote the lowest guy on your roster and compared him to the best guy at Clemson, there's going to be a pretty big gap, right? But if you take your best guy and compare him to the lowest guy, quote unquote, at a Georgetown or Villanova, they're probably maybe your guy is probably better. I mean, but I think that's what's become evident with this movement. As a kid leaves, I remember when I was coaching at Sacred Heart, we'd play Richmond, and their top two guys in the order were from Bates, and they were like all conference players.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? So,
yep.
To switch gears, I want to ask you a specific coaching question. This is a compliment and then a question. You appear to be the nicest human on the planet here, right? Like you're a lovely guy, you're a sweetheart, the way you've always treated me. And the kids, like when I'm talking to you about a player, you're so cognizant of treating this kid right. Are you a player's coach? Do you get on guys when you need to? Like what is Kristaps' coaching style?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to some umpires, Wayne, but I don't know. I don't know if they would agree with that assessment. Like, I think, you know, people say, there was a coach I was talking to recently that said he was the same guy off the field as he was on the field, right? And like, I'm just not really, like I understand why he said that, but like, and maybe that's bad, right? That I'm not, but like I'm not the same guy off on the field as I am off the field. I think I'm somewhat the same. It's not like I change like my values or anything, or my care factor about our athletes. But
Yeah, you
when
want
you're
to
between
compete.
the
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
you got when
competing.
you're between the lines, right? And that first pitch is thrown, like you're competing. And I think when it comes to the team, like it's just whatever that particular team needs, right? Like I think there's some years where they need more structure, they need more guidance. My dream is that every single year, our leadership is going to be able to, steer the ship, and then we're going to be there sort of nudging the tiller in the right direction, for the team. Because I think the best years, I'd say, are the ones where the leadership sort of they lead themselves, right? And obviously we're proud of the program as a whole that we could ever get to that point. I think there's a lot of work over the years that's gone into when that happens. But like this is a good example this year where we had 20 so first years. They needed structure, they needed discipline. And I'm not talking about yelling and running, and punishment and stuff. I think we just we couldn't assume anything, right? There's that saying, right?
Yeah.
There's no ASS, or there's an ASS and assume.
Right.
Like for us, like we couldn't assume anything with this group, and that's not a knock on this team. We had a very successful year. We ran off 11 wins to end the season. We sort of figured it out by the end, but like I remember one time early in the year, there was a game ball, right? The other team leaves a game ball and the pitcher didn't know that there was a game ball provided, and the ball just sat there in the cubby the entire game. And it's like, was it on us as coaches
Right.
to not give, we usually give them the ball, right? But that young first year didn't understand that, the other team provides the game ball to warm up in the bullpen. Like there were several other examples like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where we just had to teach a lot. We had to reinforce a lot. But like those challenges are also what I live for. And Joe Walsh said that too, is like, if everything was easy, you'd never get better.
Right. It's just so true.
Interactions with parents, interactions where, athletes might have gotten themselves in some trouble, different things that come up during the season. Like those challenges are what helps you get better as a person, as a coach. So that's something that Joe said that really stuck with me over the years.
Yeah, I love everything you just said, but it also makes me think of one time in coaching, being a pitching coach, and trying to learn this new pickoff at second base, and I'm like sweating trying to teach everyone this pickoff and
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. And then after that little part of practice ended, a couple of the seniors grabbed the entire pitching staff, went off by themselves, and taught everybody how to do this pickoff without me having. And I was like,
awesome.
what is going like exactly like how great leadership, and they care and they listen to the like how good that makes you feel of like, wow, I got guys here that care and are taking something off my plate, which was really neat.
Yeah, that's the great thing about D3. You have a platform to be able to develop leaders, and develop leadership. And some years are better than others, but I think D3 is a great opportunity to find yourself as a person, as a baseball player. Probably going to have a better chance to contribute earlier, right? We're talking about talented, high school prospects. You're not going to jump in and play necessarily right away, but at least you have a better chance, to be able to come in and make an impact. Sometimes that's better for prospects to overall development.
You're right. Yeah.
To be able to, like, that's part of what turns them into being a Division I player, is being able to get that attention early in their career, rather than stagnating, right? At a different level sometimes. So it's cool when the prospects sort of see that vision, they see that they may be able to come in and impact, and they see that we're going to be their primary interest. We're always at practice, when we're in season, that's the priority. We're now leaving practice to go recruiting, like it's all our team and our athletes during the season.
Yeah, that's great. All right, it's a perfect transition to the ABCA is the coaches convention. The Mohegan Sun. The ABC is the national.
Right. Yeah.
The Mohegan Sun's the local one in Connecticut, regional, I should say, that's been going on 22, 23 years. I think I've been to 20 of them. And they sponsor the podcast. And I always try to end with a question which is educational, because that's what the whole convention is about. If you looked back to your, high school self, in terms of what you'd tell yourself now as an adult who's been coaching this long, would you, or I could ask it saying, hey, if there's a 15 or 16-year-old kid in high school, freshman, sophomore, junior, that wants to play college baseball, what would you say are the key things you need to have in order or be doing to make that goal happen when the time comes?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. Then again, I don't do a lot of these podcasts, so.
Well, and I'm talking along the lines of strength
Yeah.
training, sleep, or
Yeah, no, I
habits,
get, I get the question. I'm just thinking about, because I want to give the answer that I think surrounding yourself with the right type of people would definitely be near the top of the list. Like, knowing what you want to do, like you can't, if you don't know what you're working towards, like earlier you asked me, like, when did I want to be a coach? I knew very early on, right, in my adult life, that's what I want, or relatively right early in my life, that I wanted to be a coach. If you're, not that there's anything wrong with taking some time to figure it out, that's what college is for, right, to figure out what you want to do, but like, you sort of want to figure out what you're working towards, and that would also be up near. How do you know what you need to do if you don't know what you're working towards?
Right.
And then also just like try to go all in on the things that you want to do. Like if you want to be an All-American player, if you want to, make it to pro ball, if you want to get a job, on Wall Street, you have to do the things that need to be done to be able to do that. It's not just going to magically happen. Like you need to go all in on those things, or relatively all in, and do the things that it takes to accomplish those goals. So those are some things that I think would have helped me at the time. Not that somebody probably told that to me and it just sort of went in one ear, went out the other. But, again, thankfully my parents really gave me some good fundamentals, that were able to get me to some really great places in life.
But you said something that's really relevant I wanted to echo, which is not just surround yourself with good people, but attach yourself to the people. Like if every kid that's watching this is on a team in high school with 20 some odd kids, right? 3 or 4 are always bad mouthing the coach, or some others don't want to do the extra side. And then there's 3 or 4 kids that want to play in college that are going to stay after practice to take extra ground balls, or right. So surrounding or attaching yourself to this group of kids that want the same thing that you want is really important. Like I see that as an adult. I see when I leave my neighborhood, there's a bar that all hours of the day people are out drinking. Like, I don't know how you could be drinking at 11 in the morning, but they're out there, right? And then I'll drive past a CrossFit gym and people are putting themselves through torturous workouts at the same drive that I'm taking, right? So it's like where you attach yourself is probably what you're also going to become. So I think I wanted to echo that because you're surrounded with all the different people. So who are you going to attach yourself with? I think it will ultimately lead to what you want to do. And it could be back to your parents with the music. If you want to be into music, you should be all in. And that's why I tell people all the time, if you're not all into baseball, God bless you, man. Who said baseball is the be all end all? There's other sports, there's other interests. And I do occasionally see kids that are wrapped up in baseball when they really don't love it. Maybe their family loves it and that's where their friends are, but they'd rather be playing the violin or doing something else.
Sure.
So I try to at an early age say to kids, like, it's okay if you don't want this baseball thing. Like it's everything's not for everybody. But Kristaps, so awesome to have you on here. I was excited that you were excited to be on here. We had this scheduled for tomorrow originally.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that Zach Short, who played for me at Sacred Heart, who's had a crazy major league career, he's with the Tigers now.
Yeah.
The Tigers are in to play the Mets. I have tickets for tomorrow's 110 game, and now I'm going to do a rain dance because it appears to be raining tomorrow. But I'm hoping I wanted to have the option open.
Oh man, that's so cool that you're gonna hope. That's so meaningful to him. To have you be there. Like those moments only happen once.
Well, and just to echo him briefly, because he's one of the best people on the planet. But 2016 gets drafted by the Cubs. Gets traded to the Tigers a few years later, makes his debut with the Tigers. Up and down that year, following year plays almost the whole year with the Tigers. At the end of the year, gets released. Next year opens the season with the Mets. Gets traded to the Red Sox for literally 4 or 5 days. Gets traded to the Braves. Finishes the year with the Braves. After the year, gets released. Plays the next year mostly with the Astros. Then the following year gets released. This year, spring training with the Yankees, traded to the Nationals 2 days before spring training ends, then goes from the Nationals to the Tigers. The Tigers, he plays a game 2 weeks ago with the Tigers. The day after the game he plays, they release him. 2 days later, they pick him up again, and now he's at Citi Field. Like, so I'll send him these texts like, "Hey, Shorty, how's everything going?" Like, and I'll say, "How's everything going?" And he'll be like, "Oh, I thought you reached out because they cut me yesterday." I go, "No, just checking in, And then I'll say, "Hey, how's it going? Oh, are you are you reaching out to come see me at Citi Field tour?" It's like funny.
That's awesome.
It's awesome, but it's realizing how crazy that pro world is too. Of like, it's a huge business to get moved around like a part.
Yeah. Well, we talk about that. Like, it's like the best day, when you get drafted or signed, everybody's got the cameras on you, social media and stuff, but then reality sort of kicks in. That's also why we like our guys to play summer ball because, Northwoods, Coastal, if you come back after that summer and you're like, like you probably aren't going to cut it as a pro.
Very much so. Yeah, very
And,
much.
and I can't say that from experience, right? Because I didn't play
No,
football
we've
or
heard
anything like that.
these guys go from this college environment of team and wanting to win, and you get to the minors, and it's everyone for themselves, and you're dealing with guys that maybe got drafted higher than you.
Yeah.
And it's hot. There's no fans at these games for these rookies, etc. It's a tough road, man. It's a brutal road in the beginning, but
that says a lot about you too, that you know that history that he has, that like the care factor to know the journey of this young man is awesome.
I appreciate you saying that, but I think it's also because he's such a good person too, which is also why he keeps getting picked up, because not only is he a good player, anyone knows that they bring him in, he's going to fit in and he's going to be the kind of guy you want to be around, just as we talked about. But all right, my man, thank you so much for spending the time with me, and hopefully we'll talk to each other soon then too.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me.
All right, you got it, buddy.
All right, bye.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Game Plan podcast by College Baseball Advisors. Again, for more information about what I do with recruiting, visit my website, collegebaseballadvisor.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Kristaps Aldins, head baseball coach at Stevens Institute of Technology. We have several awesome coaches coming up. We have Adam Taraska, head baseball coach at SUNY Purchase. We have 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐢, head baseball coach at McDaniel. And we have Brendan 𝐼gerboat, head baseball coach at UMass Boston. Those will be really some fun ones. And then, of course, we'll get back to some of our D1 coaches as their seasons end as well. And we should have a good summer of programming. So we'll see you on our next episode. Thank you.